Just before I quit the highest paying job I'd ever had and jumped off the edge of my life at age 45, I faced a confluence of necessity and possibility. First, the necessity. I'd been employed full-time for almost 25 years, and no matter how hard I worked, I just couldn't seem to get ahead. I'd recently come out of denial to face the painful reality I simply wasn't making enough money as communications director at a nonprofit to cover my living expenses and pay off about $30,000 in debt. Second, I'd stumbled on a rare and unexpected possibility for getting out from behind my desk and computer screen to work on the land, assisting with an experiment focused on preserving diversity in some of the last native tallgrass prairie on the planet in the Flint Hills of Kansas. But there was a plot twist. I would be exchanging my creative and analytical skills and physical labor for food, clothing, housing, and other non-monetary resources instead of a salary. As my soul yelled, yes, and I prepared to take the leap, I consolidated my debt into a single monthly payment, cut up my credit cards with relief and rapidly dissipating shame. For the next 7 years, I lived largely without money, except for a small monthly stipend dedicated to liberating myself 1 month at a time from the debilitating weight of debt. At first, my impending escape from the rat race felt like a strange crisis of personhood as I closed long-standing accounts for the services I'd needed for survival in the city. Why in the world did I feel almost as if my worth dissolved and disappeared when I stopped getting bills and paychecks, as if I'd gotten an F in Intro to Adulthood? With a complicated combo of uncertainty and curiosity, I left behind the urban identity I've been trying on for size since age 21. I went to live on a remote off-grid ranch in a native grass hay bale house powered by sun and wind, 40 miles from the closest full-service grocery store and 1.5 miles from the nearest neighbor. One of my first assignments remains the most memorable: maintaining the composting toilet, a graphic lesson in taking responsibility for my own shit. Over the years, living more in harmony with light, weather, and season than I ever had before, I challenged and shed an entire interlocking system of assumptions I'd never thought to question. When the experiment ended and the time came to return to civilization, my freshly deprogrammed and recalibrated self refused to go back to sleepwalking in an unsustainable system. Looking back, my years on the land were a blessed recess and a transformative ideological reset. Both time and money had taken on entirely different meaning for me, and I was determined never again to fall subject to the tyranny of either one. It took a few years to adjust and reinvent myself after moving to a Kansas town with a surprisingly low cost of living, but I eventually came up with an innovative way to make a modest living. My practice is called Insight Peer Support, and my tagline is, "Together we see more possibilities." What I offer is compassionate listening and supported self-help, using my own trauma history and lived experience of adversity, addiction, and recovery as primary credentials, along with training and a state certification I got for free under a grant program I'm sad to say no longer exists. Again, a portal of possibility briefly opened, and I jumped through. The most unconventional aspect of my experimental model is the way it operates in a sort of underground economy and ethic of enough. something I learned from the Tallgrass Prairie. For the last 11 years, I've provided private pay services according to a creative system in which whatever a person makes an hour in their job, if they have one, is what they pay me for an hour of my time. This means my compensation ranges wildly from a minimum of $5 an hour to $125 an hour. And yet, despite the wide fluctuation, this approach has somehow balanced out to support my simple living style. I wavered and nearly lost my nerve at the end of the first year as my idealism ran headfirst into reality. But I am so glad I kept the faith long enough to see the magic start unfolding. From the beginning, I've also offered the first appointment at no charge, which has amounted to 700 or so hours of freebies over the years, something like $20,000 worth of so-called lost income. But to my mind, nothing is lost because time is not money. Time is an opportunity to concentrate my presence in the present moment and demonstrate what I have to offer: precious heart-to-heart listening and love. Word of mouth remains my central marketing strategy. As an example of my model at its best, when a peer was diagnosed with terminal cancer and eventually got too weak to work, I offered to donate my support for whatever remained of her too short life. I could afford to do so because this diversified net holds in times of trouble. And that includes when I got sick last year, and a number of peers voluntarily paid me for visits I'd had to cancel. Every so often, the first time a new peer pays me $5, $10, or $20 at the end of an hour together, they might say something a little apologetic, like, "Oh, I know you're worth a lot more than this." And I always affirm that the essential worth of our time and attention is equal. It's the monetary system's metrics that are so skewed. I sometimes joke that according to this pay-what-you-make formula, if the CEO of one of the top health insurance systems came to see me for just 1 hour, I could afford to take the rest of the year off, maybe even 2. But the truth is, I would not want to do that because these peer relationships are part of a dynamic reciprocity that keeps me in a flow of inner and outer resources no amount of money can buy. In many ways, I see my community support practice as bearing similarities to the old country doctor who knew 3 generations of a family and accepted chickens as payment for a house call. He knew his patients across time, across kitchen tables, across seasons of unexpected grief and unpredictable harvest, sharing in a family's fortunes as they rose and fell. He understood intuitively that both illness and healing happen in a community context. Like the country doctor, I have an office and I also make house calls. I've also gone with peers to medical appointments and court dates, met in their hospital room, talked while we walked, visited 6 feet apart on camp chairs in the park during COVID, met by the roadside, and waited for the tow truck when a peer's car broke down as she was headed to see me, and done household chores for a peer after surgery. Children, friends, parents, partners, even family dogs have been known to occasionally come along to visits. And I've even played my ukulele and sang a musical farewell at a peer's memorial service. Yes, money still matters, but it's far from the most precious form of exchange. I've also been compensated in fresh garden produce, eggs, pasture-raised beef, wild-hunted venison, homemade relishes and preserves, freshly baked bread, help with home and auto repair, massages, a free eye exam, regular use of a peaceful country getaway, and more. And for a number of years as I was getting launched, the owner of the building in which I live offered me what I was giving others, the grace to pay what I could afford for this available commercial space, which for the first year meant swapping my in-kind administrative skills for a rent-free home for my fledgling enterprise. And you can't beat the commute. I just walk downstairs. I can't begin to express how nourished I feel by all this non-monetary wealth and creative capital, and deeply woven into a community support network as never before in my life. It's a mystery to me why this caring cooperation can feel so radical and countercultural at times. I learned it watching my parents and grandparents. I like to imagine all my ancestors applauding my ingenuity. I've tried to build something they might recognize. I don't accept insurance, require any intake forms, take session notes, or keep records and files of any kind. Some people wonder if this is even legal to bypass all these administrative trappings of service provision. As far as I know, it's simply unorthodox, not illegal. I build relationships, not case files. By contrast, today's sprawling, top-heavy, impersonal, for-profit health systems run by the billionaire class see you and me as ID numbers, billing codes, and potential profit. Their bottom line is how much they can extract from you and your insurance if you have it. Mine is what you can actually afford, whether you have insurance or not, and what we can exchange to strengthen one another and our communities. What we need in order to build a more human scale model, I believe, is not out there somewhere waiting to be legislated or handed down. It already exists in what I've built here at Insight since 2015. In the choices I will make later today at the neighborhood scale, and in what you will do with your life. It lives in our commitment to each other, expands in proportion to our mindful and heartful presence, and deepens in the way we honor each other's dignity, time, and gifts. I haven't worked a traditional 40-hour-a-week job since I turned my back on a great many assumptions and obligations in 2004. I've lived debt-free for 17 years. And perhaps the most vital lessons I've learned from my experiments are these. Number one, it's possible to do good and do well at the same time. Number two, if I want to live in a better world, I have to help create it. I understand not everyone gets an opportunity to drop out of the economy long enough to see it with fresh eyes. But I think there are numerous ways to opt out in plain sight, perhaps even inspiring others with our creative alternatives along the way. Thank you for joining me in reimagining and birthing a compassionate and interdependent economy of equality and enough. And thank you for hanging out with me in the living room at Insight for a bit. Like all my peers, I am still on the healing path. I sometimes refer to what we do here as safe relationship practice, and I need it as much as anyone.